welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Britt. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Man, I am excited today. Thank you for your time today. And let me tell you what, we are in for it today. Today, we have one of my favorite guests. We're in season 2 here, and I'm just really excited. It is one of the top business and personal development coaches. I'm not only in your field, I'm saying everybody's field here. I'm excited. She is passionate about helping people uncover and shift limiting beliefs to create greater success and deep fulfillment in their lives. And that just gives me goosebumps to think about it. So if you're hearing that deep fulfillment in your life, how many of us are searching for this? She's an avid outdoor adventurer, a backpacker, loves snowboarding and rock climbing. And this could be a show of it in and of itself. We could call it the Britt Lefkoe Adventures, right? And that's her handle. Everybody, please welcome Britt Lefkoe to the show. Britt, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
And I just wanted to shorten that intro a little bit too, because there's so much more that I want to talk about, but I wanted to get engaged with you right away. But there's so much more that the listeners should know about you. And the fact that you work with Fortune 10 companies, high achieving entrepreneurs, executives, organizations, understand specifically the ones who understand that mindset is the key to their success. That's so important. Mm-hmm. And even a step further, for over 20 years, you've used neuroscientific approach to help clients achieve unprecedented growth and create that deep fulfillment. And removing those barriers right away, I mean, that's so important. Obviously, you're a keynote speaker, and that's how we met. It was a smaller little get up. But man, the conversation right away just shook me inside. And I feel like we connected right away. You connect easily with a lot of people, but just tell us a little bit about how you got started, because these pieces all laid together, shifting those limiting beliefs, focused on mindset, and then your ability to connect with people at a higher level who are focused on the right things in life and searching for that deeper fulfillment in life. Tell us a little bit about how you got started doing that.
Yeah. So my origin story is really important to me. Right around the time I was born, my dad created a process to help people shift limiting beliefs. So I grew up with this. And as a little kid, bleeding heart empath, I just wanted to save the world. And it was so clear to me that this was how, because if we're in our own way, right, if the difference between us going after what we want and not going after what we want is our mindset, if the difference between successful, happy relationships and unsuccessful, unhappy relationships is our mindset, then mindset is everything, right? If we say yes or no, if we go after it, if we don't go after it, if we are beating ourselves up or we're cheering ourselves on, that the voice in our head is ultimately what determines how happy we are and how successful we are. So as a little girl being like, wait a minute, this could change the world, right? Imagine 6 billion people, instead of beating themselves up every time they made a mistake, using their creative mind to say, okay, that didn't work. What does work? We're going to go after this. We're not giving up. Like, what would we achieve? What would be possible? So I became really invested in this work at a young age. And after, at this point, it was probably maybe 10, 15 years of professional experience, I really started getting curious about what's my voice, right? What is my unique contribution to this work? And so I would say kind of the next 5 to 10 years were me really building my own IP and kind of adding on the things that are uniquely mine from, again, 20 years of experience with this work. So that's how I got started.
That's awesome. And the family connection, and we've talked about that a little bit, but you've got this deep connection with helping people. Mm-hmm. And I'm not comparing your path with Anthony Robbins, but I think some of the stuff that I've read and some of our engaging conversation was based around that neuroscientific approach to these beliefs and these limiting beliefs. And that stems back to a process that your father had created, right? And then you're taking this thing and twisting it and learning and modifying with all these interesting conversations that you're having, not only with people in general, but high performing people.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot of people hear Fortune 500, but I said Fortune 10.
Yeah.
Right? This is a whole nother level of people. What I love about conversations with you, Britt, is it whether it's Fortune 10 or it's just the two of us over dinner, it feels like the same thing.
Yes.
And it's that connection that's really important. And one of the things I know I hear you say a lot is Auntie Britt, right?
Uh-huh.
This story of Auntie Britt. But I want to jump into this a little bit. And this is Real Estate Mogul MD, and we work a lot with physicians. And there's a lot of physicians out there listening right now. And our kind of connection to that is investing in real estate. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of jump on this conversation of what are some of these limiting beliefs, because we know, we know that in a passion where you have a career education in order to do your passion, there's a lot of focus on your passion, and we miss out on things like financial education, investing education, business education, those kind of things. When I say we, I'm speaking of physicians. I am not a physician.
Yeah.
So we know that's part of it, right? Mm-hmm. But there's something that happens or doesn't happen from conditioning, from whatever it is that's inside of us, that's beyond all of that. Because guess what? I didn't have any of that either. Mm-hmm. And I am an investor. So I've created these hurdles. I've removed these limiting beliefs. So there's something beyond just this education piece or time piece, right? So what is it that kind of jumps out to you at first? What are some limiting beliefs that would keep, physicians or somebody that has the funds or the ability to invest? What would keep them from investing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I have a couple answers. The first one is that we have beliefs about control. We have beliefs about money. We have beliefs about ourselves. We have beliefs about the way things are and about the world. So all of these different types of beliefs can impact how you invest. So if you believe that money is scarce and hard to get, that's going to impact the way that you view investments. It's also going to impact the way you view what's possible, right? So if you have a small linear way of thinking, the idea that you could create exponential wealth by making great investments is something your brain isn't open to. No, it has to be hard, right? That's a huge belief I see, that making money is hard. Well, if making money through investments is easy, that's going to create internal conflict. If you have beliefs that the way to survive or the way to be safe is to be in control, and of course, these are subconscious beliefs that we are unaware of and that we very often disagree with, right? And if we have beliefs that the way to be safe is to be in control, well, investing might feel out of control. Even if it's logical and it's a great choice, if you don't feel that feeling of control, that can create fear. We might have beliefs about what we deserve. So if you have a set of beliefs that I only deserve X, Y, and Z, well, investing could rub up against those beliefs and have you hold back. So there's so many different types of beliefs that impact the way we think, feel, and behave. And I want to add one piece in here that I think is really important. And, you said I have a neuroscientific approach. For me, I love the neuroscience. I think it is endlessly fascinating. The part of our brain that plans and dreams and visions, right? This is the part of our brain that knows what we want and it knows how to get it. That's our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is not responsible for our decision-making. So this herein, right, lies our greatest conflict. The part of your brain that knows what you want and how to get it. The part of your brain that plans and is clear is not the part of your brain that acts. The part of your brain that drives your decision-making is actually your amygdala. And your amygdala is your emotional brain. Your emotional brain is the part of your brain that houses all of your limiting beliefs. So if you have limiting beliefs from early childhood that have developed, like, I'm not good enough, what makes me worthwhile is being successful, money is scarce and hard to get, the way to be safe is to be in control, you might dream into a huge investment portfolio. You might dream into a world where you make investments easily and where the returns are large. But the part of your brain that actually acts is the part of your brain that's limited. So this is why we so often have this internal conflict, which will result as a feeling of stuckness or stagnance or stress, or I can't make up my mind. So that's what's actually going on behind the curtain of why we don't do what we know is best for us, especially when it comes to making great investments.
And this inside of here too, and I think that we talked about this before too, there's this this thing that our brain does, even in that separation, is it's going to do everything it can to go towards the pleasure and avoid the pain, right? And it's going to do everything it can to make things true that we want to be true. So if in this process too, with that separation between those two places, there's this weird dynamic of these other things happening to say, I'm basically creating my own future from the stories that I'm telling in my head.
Yeah.
Right. So that, I think we have talked about this too. So the stories that we were telling ourselves, it kind of touches on these beliefs, right? Making money is hard. Well, if it's easy, then that means I'm wrong. So my brain probably fighting those two things together.
Right. It's almost like you wouldn't create it. I think a helpful way to look at it is that the part of our brain where our limiting beliefs live is limited by what it believes is possible, right? So it's not so much that we're trying to prove ourselves right. It's just that we can't even conceive of something existing outside of that, right? So if I believe that making money is hard, the idea that money could be easy, I would write it off as that's luck. Or, well, that's for other people, but they already had so many resources to begin with. I would find a way to justify why something outside of my belief is true. So I think, again, a really helpful way to look at it is it determines what we deem possible. So if I believe that what's possible is that things have to be hard, or what's possible is that things take a long time, or what's possible is I'm only deserving of this much, that will determine how I think, how I feel, and how I behave. So that is the engine of my decision. So if I look at my life, of course they're creating my life because I'm acting in accordance with what I believe to be possible and realistic. So it's not that I'm creating my stories because I'm trying to prove myself right. I'm creating my stories because I'm living within a really small box of what my brain thinks is possible.
And the possible, do you relate that to the pain and pleasure piece too?
So I would say, I think pain and pleasure is a framework. The framework that I use is that your brain has one goal, right? If you look at a hierarchy of goals, your brain's goal is to keep you safe. It's not to be happy, and it's not even pleasure. So your brain's fundamental mechanism is a safety mechanism. And so if you believe that the way to be loved is to be helpful and to be generous, your brain will put being loved over making fiscally responsible choices, right? So love is synonymous for a young child, love is synonymous with safety. So if I believe what makes me loved and worthwhile as a young child, I need to feel loved and worthwhile in order to feel safe, because my survival doesn't depend upon me. It depends upon my parents or primary caregivers. So I need to feel accepted in order to feel safe. So if I believe the way to be loved and accepted is to be generous and to take care of people, I will bleed money, because even though that's irresponsible, my brain is more focused on being loved and worthwhile than it is on making good choices. So I think the safety mechanism is really important, that you will do what makes you feel safe, even if it has nothing to do with what's actually safe. So the perception of safety and actual safety are completely independent of one another.
And then if, like, on a self-assessment, so for the listeners out there today, on a self-assessment scenario, in order to shift limiting beliefs, first we have to figure out what those limiting beliefs are. Yeah. And these 3, 4, 5 that you kind of labeled out here, they seem like very prominent beliefs. Is there a question that I could ask myself to kind of point myself in the direction of understanding where I'm at in order to understand where I want to go?
Yeah. A really helpful way to start to identify your limiting beliefs is imagine the scenario, the ideal scenario, right? So imagine you have 7 investment properties, you have done your financial planning, and you're really excited about this new home that you are going to invest in. All is well. Everything is smooth. Everything is easy. The financial returns are above and beyond what you thought. Pause. What's the first bit of resistance that comes up? What's the first block? What's the first, but? The voice in your head that tells you that it's either it's not possible, it's not going to happen for you, it's too easy, bad things always happen. That's your belief. So your belief is your response to the good. So when you imagine things working out perfectly, whatever the voice is that says, well, that's never going to happen for me, right? Or that's too easy, or well, just wait until the market crashes, right? Whatever that negative voice in your head is, that is the voice of your belief. So you can kind of untangle those voices, and that will lead you in the direction of figuring out what your beliefs are.
So, and then in this shift too, it feels like to me, the first thing that's coming up is like, and trusting. I need to trust other people in these scenarios too. So there's almost another hurdle inside of there. Okay, say this is, everything's great, but here's this other thing.
That's it. You nailed it.
This other thing that's happening now, I need to find the strength inside of myself in order to shift these things. But I know there's a huge trust piece when it comes into this, because I don't know this. Remember, we started in the beginning. I don't know this. I didn't learn this in school. I didn't have time to learn this stuff in school.
Right.
So these things, maybe those are some limiting beliefs in them.
I was going to say, so those are, so not everybody's going to come up against trust. Whatever you come up against, those are your particular beliefs. So it's always going to feel like something that's a little bit different. Those are your limiting beliefs. So you feel like, oh, well, I have to trust people. That's a sign that there's a belief that people can't be trusted. Mm-hmm. So whatever comes up for you, those are your limiting beliefs. So that was actually such a perfect example, because you, through that visualization, ended up acknowledging, oh, wow, I have some limiting beliefs around trust, that people maybe can't be trusted, or that people don't have your, whatever those beliefs are, whatever that language is. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so yes, I think that was a perfect example.
And this is another scenario where, on this show, I hope everybody hears it and picks it out too. I get to talk about things that aren't talked about, right? Mm-hmm. And one of those things, being outside of the medical profession, is getting into the medical profession, getting into these networks, because it is a high earning platform. Mm-hmm. And the reason how I started working with physicians is I was the other side of it. I was where the money can go to work by itself, right? In real estate, and getting across that trust platform to get in there. There's a lot of it where it's known that physicians do not have financial education, do not have business education. And it's almost like they're targeted. So there's this unsaid thing, like they're targeted and they're an easy target. So that's what made me think of the trust thing of this is, you can do this, right? Physicians are very, very good at what they do. They're very focused on it. So there's so much of these limiting beliefs that can just be eliminated.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when you don't have limiting beliefs about trust, you end up at discernment, right? So if you have a limiting belief, one of the ways you know that you have it is because typically it will feel like either or, right? It'll feel like black and white thinking. It'll feel like you're fighting, or it'll feel like you're trying to overcome it. You're trying to explain to yourself. You're trying to rationalize. There's all of this extra effort. If you have no limiting beliefs about trust, that doesn't mean you trust everyone, right? You don't swing to the other side of the pendulum. You come center. So it's not either people can't be trusted or I can trust everyone. It's some people can be trusted, some can't. And I won't know until I talk to them, but I trust myself and my own discernment to say, you know what, there's something about this person that actually doesn't feel right for me. Their actions didn't match their words, or I don't know why. There's just something about them. That doesn't mean you have a belief people can't be trusted. If you come in with an openness, you trust your own discernment. And I think that it's discernment that is at our core, and limiting beliefs have us kind of leapfrog out of discernment and into this swinging pendulum, right? And so I want all of your listeners to know, if you get rid of people can't be trusted, that doesn't mean you trust everyone, right? It means you have discernment. If you get rid of money is scarce and hard to get, that doesn't mean you now spend all of your money just because it doesn't mean that you believe money is going to fall out of the sky, right? The opposite of money is scarce and hard to get is not money falls out of the sky. It's, again, I have discernment. I look at the markets. I look at how much money I have. I talk to my financial planner. I do it. And then I make choices that are logical and realistic and appropriate given my financial goals. So it's coming back to logic. We lose access to logic when we are in our limiting beliefs. Our limiting beliefs pull us into our emotional brain. And it is our prefrontal cortex, right? Our logic that helps us to make great decisions, but we do not make logical decisions. While we have limiting beliefs, it is our emotions that make our decisions. When you work through the limiting beliefs, you regain access to logic, which again is discernment. What is the right financial choice? Should I be investing in a $5 million house or in an $800,000 house, right? Do I want to be doing luxury rentals? Whatever it is that you're looking at as the option. So again, it's not that you're going to swing on the pendulum that all of a sudden you're now fiscally irresponsible. You just get to be in choice about what the best decisions are for you, given your goals, rather than making an emotional decision.
Trusting yourself is huge. Mm-hmm. And even in this conversation, I think I just felt one of mine of not having, I just told myself in my head, I don't have like this intuition sense because I'm going to give you everything. Like right out of the gate, you've got everything, Britt. You've got all my love. You've got all my trust. You've got it all. And that story I just told myself is okay. And now that's going to hurt me, right? I can't discern between the two of these things. And in my particular scenario, my wife is a wonderful, contrast to me because she says she's the realist, right? I'm the dreamer. She's the realist. So there's this real cool connection between the two of us. On the mindset piece, I was thinking too of the income versus expense piece. And this is a mindset piece too. It's a little bit of a jump. And I don't know if you may find some limiting type beliefs in here, but as a physician transitions from residency into like an attending physician into the real actual job, right? There is a very large increase in income. Mm-hmm. So say you may go from $60,000 a year up to $200,000, $300,000 a year. Mm-hmm. There's something that happens in mindset to where it fulfills, I believe it's the Parkins law. Things will expand to the limits you give them. What was it?
Law of constraints.
Yeah, I think that might be what it is. So I apologize. I don't know the key part of the exact thing, but it's real stuff. It happens, right? Yeah. So as your income increases, now all of a sudden here comes your expenses. And this is a mindset thing, right? This is something to where I've got to feel like I'm doing this because this person has it, or this is what people think doctors do. Yeah. And all of a sudden I can't keep up with my debt. I can't keep up with my spending,
So here's how I would think about the shift in mindset. The beliefs that you have become magnified when you make more money. It's not that the mindset shifts. So whatever your beliefs are, so for the most part, your beliefs are typically locked in by the age of 7, like most of your beliefs. So I would say about 90 to 95% of your beliefs are going to be locked in very early in life. Those beliefs will be, again, exacerbated or magnified by the amount of money you make. So if you grow up in a family where you learn money doesn't grow on trees, don't, the tall poppy syndrome, right? Like don't stand out, don't look like you're too happy, right? People are going to judge you. People aren't going to like you. You're going to make all this money. You're going to feel guilt. You're going to feel shame. You're going to feel very confused about the size of your house. You're likely to live as though you're still poor and have a fear that everything's going to go away. If you grow up in an environment where you learn that what makes you worthwhile is being successful and achieving and being showy, and you think that showing your wealth is important, you are likely, as you make more money, to start spending beyond your means. If you have, so whatever the belief systems you have going into these transitions, those are going to determine in a lot of ways how you spend, how you invest, how you save, or if you were the person who desperately wanted to be able to have this life that you couldn't have, and you felt like I'm not good enough and everyone else is better than me. When you have the money, there's a good chance you're going to try to make up for lost time and say, well, I'll show them, right? Look, I am good enough. Look. And now you're spending again outside of your means and you're causing problems. Versus in contrast, and I want to bring in one more example about the generosity and giving. If you believe that what makes you worthwhile is giving and being generous, you are very likely, as you make more money, to give away more money. There are people who do incredibly well, who do not save because they've given it all away. Now, I'm not saying giving is bad, but being fiscally responsible within the context of how you give, when you give, where you give, why you give, is important. So it's balancing, where do I want my money to make money? Where are the places that I want to be generous? Where are the places where I want to make sure that I'm saving and, feel confident that I have money in the bank? What are my goals? So there's these different questions. And if you can ask these questions, coming back to discernment, if you can ask these questions with discernment, you'll make great choices. But if you're being driven by how you appear or what you believe you should be doing or how you felt as a kid and trying to make up for it, that's when often our expenses will rise without us using logic to determine what we actually want our expenses to be.
Interesting. And is that almost a thought popped into my mind, those first 7 years, is that a conditioning of our environment in those first 7 years?
There's a couple different reasons why 0 to 7 are so important. The first one is from a brainwave perspective. So you're in basically what's like a hypnotic state. That's why we say kids are sponges. So from the ages of 0 to 7, you're basically in your theta, you've delta, you don't have the higher brain waves yet. So that's part of why. But the other part, which I think for me is the most important, is that you don't yet have a prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex doesn't really even start developing until the age of 7. And your prefrontal cortex is your discernment, right? That's your ability to use logic, reason, rationalization, willpower. It's your ability to think of cause and effect. It's your ability to see context. So in your first 7 years, everything that is coming in, right, you're taking in this heightened hypnotic state, and you don't have the part of your brain that would be able to say, oh, this is really inappropriate behavior for an adult, or, oh, wow, my parents work a lot because they're struggling financially, not because I'm not worthwhile, right? It doesn't have to do with me. So it's the perfect storm, right? It's the perfect storm of sponginess plus a lack of the part of your brain that has logic and discernment that could reasonably understand your situation in a way that, again, would help you to be able to keep out the parts that are unhealthy.
In this first 7 years, obviously they stay so deep in us, and so many times and throughout our entire life, then we're battling back against some of these things that may affect us negatively. And that is even in those first limiting beliefs that we've set, right? And now we found a way where we can self-assess these things, right? We can ask this question. We can imagine ourselves in this ideal scenario. And these first buts that come out, these are these things that may have tracked all the way back into those first 7 years. Now what? Now what? Now what can I do? Do I need to know where I'm going in any of this? Because one thing that stands out to me the most, Britt, is the that deep fulfillment piece. And really you hear a lot of people talk about why. I want to invest in real estate. Why? Well, I want to make passive money. Why? Why do you want more money, right? Why do you want more time? What are you going to do with it? That deep fulfillment piece is something that's so deep. So where does that layer in to know where we're going first? Like, do I need to know where my limiting beliefs are first, or do I need to know where I'm going to know where I'm even being limited from?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I want to break this up into 2 pieces. The first one is deep fulfillment, from my perspective, comes when we are not in the cycles of doing what we think we have to do, what we think we should do, what we think will make us be worthwhile, what we think will make us safe, and we're actually living in alignment with what we actually want. So your wants. That
creativity, is that like in a creative state?
I mean, I think creativity is part of it, right? But underneath your beliefs is a self who knows exactly what they want. Your preferences, if you like broccoli or cauliflower more, right? It's not complicated. If you'd rather be indoors or outdoors, if you'd rather stay in a hotel or go camping, you have preferences. And that is the self, right? The self has preferences. When those preferences are in conflict with our beliefs, we end up doing the things we don't want to do. And that doesn't create fulfillment, right? So this example that I think of often is your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that wants to come home and be with your family, right? If you know that deep fulfillment would tell you, I don't want to work until 9 p.m. every night. I want to spend time with my kids. That's what we want. That's very clear. But if your amygdala, the part of your brain that drives your decision-making, your emotional brain, your brain that is responsible for safety, and your brain that is 95% of your brain power, if that part of your brain says, yes, but Brett, what makes you worthwhile is achieving and being successful, you're not going to go home.
Yep.
So deep fulfillment is what happens when we are not run by our beliefs and we're able to live in our preferences. I'd rather go home, right? And one day you say, you know what? I do prefer to stay in the office. There's a ton to get done and I'm going to feel way better this week if I just get the paperwork done. But again, listen to how simple that is. It's preference. I prefer to go home and be with my family. These things don't really need to get done. That's very different than the drive of, well, I'll be worthwhile if I do this and I'll be stressed if I don't do that. And I want to be with my family and I'm a terrible father. And right. That's all beliefs. So the noise is the beliefs. The quiet is the subtle preference of, I really don't like that. Yeah, I really prefer that. That would be nice, right? That's the simplicity of deep fulfillment. Deep fulfillment, from my perspective, is very, very simple. It is what happens when we listen to our honest preferences without being overridden by these beliefs about what we have to do, what we should do, what we need to do, what we shouldn't be doing. Why would you do that, right? It's when those voices are quiet. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to address is when you talked about shifting the limiting beliefs. So there are, you can go about it the kind of simple do-it-yourself way. I mean, of course, if people want to get more into it and they want to get rid of their limiting beliefs, like, yes, absolutely do that. But just from a do-it-yourself perspective, because not everybody is in a position to do one-on-one coaching, right? So what I would say is, imagine if that belief weren't true, what would become possible? And this will help to expand your thinking. In this context, you're trying to utilize your neuroplastic nature. And if you say, well, I couldn't do that because, again, money, you have to sock it away, right? It's my grandpa used to say, sock it away. My grandpa was Depression era, right? My family was Jewish, Depression era. My grandparents were very, very poor growing up. And he learned you sock it away for a rainy day. Yep. So if my grandfather had been listening to this, he would say, not a chance am I going to take a penny from my savings and put it in the market, right? Whether it was real estate, it's put it in the market, right? Mm-hmm. It's take it out of my hands because you got to sock it away for a rainy day. And so what I would say to my grandfather, AKA the listeners that you have that are like my grandfather, is if I didn't have to sock it away for a rainy day, right? What would become possible? How would I invest differently, right? If I was no longer in the depression and if things had changed, how would I invest differently? If my goal is, if my belief is, well, I don't deserve it. Okay, well, if I did deserve it, what would be possible? How would I think, feel, and behave? Now, you're not getting rid of the belief. You're just enabling your brain to access the possibilities that are inaccessible to you beforehand. So again, you can get rid of the beliefs, which will make all of this very, very easy. You do it once, you never have to worry about it again. But if you're not getting rid of the beliefs, you can still utilize your neuroplastic nature and you can still utilize the capacity of the brain to see beyond, but you have to question. So again, let's imagine that I do my visualization. And so I'm a listener, right? And I'm like, okay, I want to invest in real estate, and I imagine everything goes perfectly. It's great. Everything. Okay. What's the first block? Good things don't happen to me. Right. I work with so many clients who have beliefs like bad things always happen to me. Right. It's the waiting for the other shoe to drop. Okay, great. So I know that my limiting beliefs are about the other shoe's going to drop. Good things don't happen to me. It's too good to be true. Great. So what if that wasn't true? Right. What if I imagine that actually the other shoe didn't drop? And good things did happen to me? Then how would I invest? Because when you overcome the emotion, you come to discernment. Now, I want to be really, really clear. This does not mean pretend that your beliefs aren't true and now swing to the other side and say the stock market's going to be great, the housing market's going to be great, everything's going to be perfect, and every penny I've ever had, I'm going to invest into real estate tomorrow. That is an emotional swing. That's not what this is about. This is not about swinging emotionally. It's asking, if that weren't true, what would be possible? From that place of possibility, now use logic, reason, and resources to make the best choice possible. So if it isn't true that good things can't happen to me and that the other shoe is going to drop, if it is possible that good things could happen to me and that the other shoe wouldn't drop, now what would I choose? You've just re-engaged logic. So when you are emotionally basically triggered, you lose access to your prefrontal cortex, right? Your prefrontal cortex is your highest level of decision-making. It's your possibilities. It's your logic, reason, rationalization, right? So that part of your brain is really, really important in investing. You want your prefrontal cortex online. So going through this exercise actually helps you to re-engage your prefrontal cortex so that you can think logically about these types of decisions. So if it isn't true that the other shoe is going to drop, if all could be good, how would I invest? You're still going to use smart investment strategies. You would never say, well, given that it's possible that everything's going to be good, let me throw all my money down the toilet, right? Mm-hmm. So do you see how nuanced and subtle that is?
Yeah. Just opening up, and actually I had jotted down a couple of notes because of that. So you're saying neuroplastic. So that means that I'm hearing like these connections can move and shift inside of our head. Is that what?
Yeah, we can create new connections at any time, and we can interrupt existing connections. When you realize that Santa Claus wasn't real, right? You were interrupting an existing neuropathway. You had a neuropathway that said there's a guy that flies in the sky with reindeer. When you realize that Santa wasn't real, you basically cut the cord. So the cord that existed between Santa and reindeer, all of those cords dissolved. So when you realize that something isn't true, this is the same thing that happens in belief work. So when I work with clients, I get them to see that the things that they thought were true, Santa being real, is just as valid in your brain, right? As money is scarce and hard to get, or I'm not good enough, or if I make a mistake or fail, I'll be humiliated, or what makes me worthwhile is achieving, whatever the limiting beliefs are. When you get that those aren't real, you literally dissolve the neural pathways because the thing that felt true becomes ridiculous. You can also create new neural pathways. So you can strengthen those neural pathways by practicing that type of thinking. So yeah, when I say neuroplastic, what I mean is you can dissolve existing neural pathways and you can create new ones.
And this was one of my biggest takeaways, I think, from your keynote speech in the mastermind that we were at is Santa's not real, right? And that's what I had written on the sheet. And it was that instance that like that belief that it was held tight, right? It was a conviction that was real, but in that instant, it's gone and those connections are severed. Mm-hmm. And I just jotted down Hebb's law here, fire together, wire together, and we can build these neural path highways doing this. And then what you were just mentioning before, I jotted down the quantum, like there's so much out there. We can't even see if we're blinded by these limited beliefs that in the beginning of our conversation, we didn't even know were there. But I think that we've laid out that question. Imagine the ideal scenario again, imagine that ideal scenario, whether it's investing or building a business or whatever, that first but that comes into your mind, that's that thing that's holding us back. And then asking ourselves, what if that were true? Then what? And then that's when that idea of the quantum opens up and say, everything that you need is right in front of you. Yeah. Right. All the relationships that you need are right in front of you. And coming back to the idea that typically the smartest person in the room asks the best questions. Yeah. Right. And it's that being able to ask ourselves these questions is amazing.
Yeah. A metaphor that I use to kind of understand this, that I think kind of ties everything together, is everything is on the table. If you think about everything is on the table, every possibility, every option, every job opportunity, every patient, every client, every investment, it's on the table. And then we walk around and we start knocking things off the table. Well, that's going to be too hard. And that's not for me. And that's going to take a really long time. And we start knocking everything off the table. And then we're left with 5 things on the table, and all of them are fine. We don't really love any of them. We have 5 options. All this is about is putting things back on the table, right? You're just putting back on the table. That doesn't mean that you're going to pick it. You don't have to eat it just because it's on the table, but it's nice to know that it's on the table, right? And this is where the idea of, I mean, it's like what you said with the quantum, but the idea that it doesn't mean that it's accessible right now, but if it's on the table, I might take the necessary steps in order to get there. So if I say, I want to have $20K a month of passive income, that's really important to me, that's a goal for me, I might not be able to do that right now, but if I take it take it off the table, I'm never going to do it. Mm-hmm. If I leave it on the table, then I'm going to start looking at, okay, well, given that my goal is to make $20K of passive income per month, how am I going to build? What am I going to do? Am I going to have a few larger investment properties that I could rent out for retreats? Or am I going to have a few smaller investment properties where I have somebody living there? Do I want to Airbnb? Whatever those questions are, the details are irrelevant. But if you take it off the table, you're not walking toward it. If you leave it on the table, you can walk toward it. And that doesn't mean it's a light switch. Sometimes it is a light switch, but it's just getting that it's the old adage, right? Nothing is impossible until you say it is. And so when you live as though everything is possible, that doesn't mean you create everything, but it means you're more in choice about what you do create. And even if you don't reach that goal, you're more likely to come up just shy, right? If the goal is, again, 20K a month of passive income, I may end up at 18. That's way better than having nothing. Absolutely. Right? Even if I don't reach the goal. So it's just about looking at, if things were possible, how would I show up? If things were possible, how would I think, feel, and behave? And I think that's the most important question we can ask.
And as you're speaking that in my mind, I feel it feels so ridiculous. Like if things were on a table and you're like, that's not going to happen. Like I was just knocking it off. It feels so ridiculous when you think about it that way. Mm-hmm. And you're removing this from the quantum, from the potential, right? You're removing it. And there's also another thing inside of our head. I forget what it is. I'm really pinned in on all these names and terms and stuff, but I know it's there, right? It exists. There's this thing that exists where our brain focuses our attention on certain things.
Reticular activating system.
Yeah, there it is, right there.
Yeah.
So like what I call the red car syndrome. The first time I got a red car or wanted a red car, then all of a sudden I'm seeing the same red car everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. Or our ability to sit inside of a busy restaurant and hear our name being spoken 4 or 5 tables away. There's something in it, whether it's pleasure or belief or preference or whatever it is, there's something that picks these things out. When we don't knock these things off the table, now our brain is automatically underlying, and it may be one thin wire in this neuroplastic highway that we're creating that's there. And even when we're not thinking of it, our brain can be collecting and focusing attention on certain things and be like, oh, this is possible and I can do it right here, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's using your brain to your advantage because it's true, right? Your reticular activating system it helps you conserve energy. Right. Because you're looking for what you've deemed to be important. Mm-hmm. And if what is important is evidence that life is hard, you will look for evidence that life is hard. And if what is important to you is evidence that anything is possible, you'll start noticing possibility. So you find it's the idea, you find what you look for, and your reticular activating system is the mechanism by which you find what you look for.
That's awesome. I think that conversation, we could lead into so many others in that particular piece right there. Now I'm thinking, okay, there's in the dream process and how we store files at night. I mean, we could go into a whole nother realm here. I think that I've absolutely enjoyed myself. We're kind of pushing up on a little time mark here. And just kind of like refocusing everybody on the idea of just start asking yourself the right questions, right? Imagining yourself in the right situation. And that situation is closer to preference and not based off of belief, right? Where does that take you in this idea? Whether it's investing in real estate, whether it's a particular kind of medicine that you're practicing, or whether it's just going completely in a whole new direction in the missionary world or something, whatever it may be, asking yourself these questions to see what's holding you back.
Right. Even in your micro decisions, right? That again, it's the question of tonight, do I really finish the paperwork or do I go home to have dinner with my family? Right. That when we become clear what is possible, if my beliefs aren't true, sometimes the preference is very subtle and it's listen instead of interrupt. Right. It's say yes instead of say no, or say no instead of say yes, or take the vacation or cancel the vacation, right? Whatever it is, but it's just really accessing your preferences because that's what leads to fulfillment, not, hustling for your worth. That doesn't lead to fulfillment. It leads to stress.
What is your take on journaling? Because I'm hearing these pieces putting together and my limiting belief out of the gate is like, it seems like a lot of work and I've got to have my game plan before I take action and all this stuff. Yeah. And it seems like journaling would take a huge help, would be a huge help in this process. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it really depends on how people think and how people process. So for some people, journaling is a really great way to collect their thoughts. For some people who are external processors, they need to say it out loud. So calling a trusted friend or a spouse is a really great way to talk these things out. For some people, they just sit and think. There's some people who really process through contemplation. There's some people who want to kind of continue the learning. So they'll listen to more podcasts. They'll start researching. So I would say, whatever is your style, I think this is an opportunity to be more of you, not to try to become someone else. So if you don't need to become a neuroscience researcher, and you don't need to become enlightened, and you don't need to become somebody who has total mastery over their mind. You can be if those are really interesting to you, but it's use this as is valuable for you. So that might mean that once a day you vision into something you want, find the block, and then explore, okay, if that block didn't exist, what would I come up with? And you jot down a couple ideas. So maybe this is something you practice once a day for 3 minutes. Maybe it's something you just kind of engage your reticular activating system, where if somebody's having a conversation about mindset, oh, wow, now I'm interested, and I wouldn't have been interested in that in the past, or right. So you can decide, how do you want to use this? How is it going to be valuable for you? If this becomes something that you now have to master, you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to do it for 2 weeks and you're going to quit, right? So this doesn't need to become something you master. Just, how do I want to use this? What's interesting to me? What key takeaways are mine? Not everyone's going to take the same key takeaways.
Yeah. Which is an awesome question. I'm excited to hear what everybody thinks of the conversation. And if somebody wanted to reach out and work with you, are you still doing the one-on-one coaching? I
sure am. Amazing. I love my one-on-one clients. That will always be and no matter how much corporate work I do, no matter what I do, I will always have my one-on-one clients.
And I've had some conversations with you, and I think it's kind of funny that I know a lot of other clients have shared that experience with you. I found myself in my car having my conversation with you because I wanted to be just completely open and just open up the cabinets, right? Open up the closets and let everything out. So it's just interesting that other clients, speak with you in those different kind of confined areas, just because, finding these limiting beliefs or finding what's holding us back. And this path, working with you on a one-on-one scenario, is to get to that deeper fulfillment, that happier life, and whatever it may be. I think there was a great comment that you had there about even in the micro decisions, even in the dinner tonight, or what's happening tomorrow, what time I leave the office next week, whatever, even in this path forward. And you don't have to be a professional at all of this, right? We don't have to make a career out of this. It's how each person takes this. So if somebody wanted to reach out and connect with you and look at maybe potentially doing the one-on-one coaching, what's the best way for the listeners to reach out to you?
Yeah. So you can go to my website. It's brittlefkoe.com, BRITTLEF as in Frankfurt, KOE, brittlefkoe.com. And you can book a call there. I am taking new clients right now, so I've got a couple more slots. So, if you get in there and, we can also just have a conversation and see. So feel free to reach out, see if, one-on-one coaching would be right for you. If it's something that's interesting to you, I would say one of the things that I really focus on is you can eliminate your stress. And I know that people who work hard, right? Because I've worked with a number of physicians in the past. And so especially for physicians, you work hard and you don't always have a ton of time. And so making sure that in the time that you're not working, that you're not stressed, I think that to me is a great focus. But I mean, anything that pops up, I would be happy to talk to you and have a conversation and see if one-on-one coaching would be good for you.
Awesome. And I'm going to keep elbowing you on this idea of a book. Are we getting any closer on the Britt Lefkoe book?
I'm working on it.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
For sure. Well, thank you for your time. Everybody out there listening to, feel free to email us comments and questions if you have anything for Britt or for us, or help us on the conversation. There was so much that was laid out here today, and my mind is just continuing to work. So maybe we could have Britt back again. If you want to send in your questions at info@physicianwealthsystems.com. We're going to have all of Britt's information here, so you guys can find her and reach out to her as well too. The last thing I would lay in is take action. Britt is absolutely amazing. I love every minute that I get to spend with her and engage. And one thing that she had mentioned to me a while back was being a seeker. So if there's anyone out there who does seek that difference, and it could be subtle, it could be bigger, but that yearning for that deep fulfillment, that happiness, the pure joy. I mean, when's the last time you could just say, I just smiled and I was grateful, right? Reach out to Britt. Britt, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, everybody have a great day. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks again for taking a listen.